In 2026, I'm going to focus most of my reading on science fiction. So for the last 2 years, I've read primarily crime and noir, Southern Gothic, Grit Lit, and a lot of books that kind of are in those spheres. And while I really enjoy that kind of writing, I've kind of had my fill of it for now. I'm sure I'll go back to it again at some point in the future, but I'm just kind of ready to push it aside and try something else. Increasingly, I'm more and more interested in the future, and I'm really interested in what people thought the future was going to be and how it's actually turned out. And I'm interested in what a lot of writers and thinkers now think the next 10, 15, 20 or beyond, what the next years are going to be like. And one thing I've always really enjoyed about science fiction is that it asks and tries to answer the question, what if? Right? That's kind of one of the classic definitions of science fiction. But increasingly, science fiction writers are adding something else to that question. Not only what if, but how will we survive? Or how will people deal with that? How will people react to the if? And those are the books that lately have really, really interested me and have really grabbed my attention and have really had a big impact on me. And I'm thinking particularly of 2 books that I recently reviewed on my channel. The first one is Doggerland by Ben Smith. That's a book that I learned of from Bookpilled, who's a fantastic sci-fi booktuber. If you're not following him, you really should be. He's a really cool guy, really just awesome channel. That was a great book that really kind of opened my eyes again to what science fiction can be, like that it can be written in a literary way while still exploring that what if question, but adding in how will people deal with it? How will we survive that? And then the second book was another recent read called Stilicide by Sinan Jones, which again, not only proposes the question, what if? In the case of that book, it's what if there were no water left, or what if water were scarce and suddenly commodified? And then how are we going to deal with that? So those books have really kind of reignited my interest in a specific type of science fiction. And I've pulled some books off my shelf that I think are in that vein. These are also included in my Read What You Own challenge, where I'm reading 75 books that I already own before I buy any more. So let's take a look at these books. So here we go. First one is going to be a buddy read with the Lit Wizard, who's got a pretty cool booktube channel, and we're doing some things together on a Discord. I've got the link down below. It is The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've only read a little bit of Le Guin's science fiction. I read some of her fantasy when I was a teenager, but I recently read The Dispossessed with Lekden from Reading from the Depths. And so Lit Wizard and I together are going to read this, The Lathe of Heaven. It's supposed to be one of the Le Guin classics about a guy who kind of is dreaming or imagining reality and is kind of starting to figure that out and tries to reshape reality. So it should be interesting, and it's a nice slim read. Oop, it's pretty floppy. But yeah, this one looks great, and also a great cover on that. I'm not sure if we're getting focus on here, but there we go. So that's going to be a buddy read to kick off January. Now this next one I've already started, so I'm kind of cheating. It's 2025, but I'm already starting my 2026 reading, and that's just how sci-fi I am. I'm already in the future reading books. So there you go, BookTube. It is Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Stugatsky. Again, Pocket 3, are we focusing? Don't know. Anyways, yeah, this is a cool book. I'm only about 30 pages in, and I'm really liking it. I like the way it's written. It's written in a really casual tone, and it kind of has kind of a cyberpunk feel to it. Come at me, nerds. I'm probably wrong there, but that's the way I'm interpreting it so far. It's about a guy who is making, sorry, why am I pausing there? It's like, how do you explain something like this? So it's in the future, obviously, or near future. And there's this area called the Zone where people are finding mysterious objects that seem to have been left behind by alien visitors. And the story starts with a guy who kind of makes his living going in there and finding stuff and trying to resell it, basically, kind of on a gray market, black market basis. Really cool. I like the way that it's written. It's really written in a really casual tone, and it just kind of dives right in and takes you right into it. So also, I like this. This is one of the SF Masterworks series. Although sometimes I don't like the artwork on those. Sometimes I prefer the more artistic covers, but these are really well-made paperbacks. At least I think they're really well-made. It's the internet, and so someone's going to tell me that I'm wrong, and we're going to love everyone for it. But these SF Masterworks, I really like the way that they're made. They're bound really well, and the size of them, it just makes it really easy to read. They're really easy to carry around with you. So if you're able to pick these up and you're a science fiction fan, these are really great additions to have. I have a few others, and they're made really well, and they really do stand the test of time. These next two are a set, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say that I've never read these, and I've only read a couple of short stories by this author. So it's time to change that. It is The Handmaid's Tale and The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. Never read these, and I know I should have. I know these are seminal science fiction works and also seminal feminist works or feminist science fiction. I'm sorry, there's The Handmaid's Tale on that side, and then The Testaments, which is the continuation or possibly sequel. I'm not really sure. Yeah, really looking forward to these because I think, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff seems to be coming true about the way the world is going, the way certain countries are running themselves right now with trying to control social narratives, political narratives, and then literally control people's lives and reproduction rights. So should be a disturbingly good read. So this next book I bought as a whim because it was shortlisted for the Booker, and then I discovered that it's kind of science fiction. I'm not really sure. We'll talk about it a little bit. It is Under the Eye of the Big Bird by Hiromi Kawakami. And yeah, this was shortlisted for the Booker in 2025. I'm not entirely sure what it's about, and that's what's intrigued me. It's kind of like a sci-fi adjacent book. I'll just read the back of it here. I think it's a pull quote from the book. Don't you think there's something strange about the way that we live just to be made and raised and to marry and raise children and then die again? But that's simply how it goes. So that really grabbed me. The cover art really grabbed me, and that it was, voted for International Booker Prize. Interestingly enough, I bought both of these here in Shanghai. I bought this here in Shanghai as well as this set, and they were on display together as part of a feminist sci-fi writers kind of display along with Ursula K. Le Guin. So should be an interesting read. Now this next book, it's a reread, but I read it when I was quite young. I think I was 12 or 13 when I read it, and it absolutely scared the crap out of me. I'm not sure it really qualifies as science fiction, but I'm going to talk about a little bit about that. It's The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, which I believe, if I remember correctly, this is another stitch-up book, like the Martian Chronicles, where it's just a bunch of short stories that he wrote over a period of time that have kind of similar themes, and then he kind of stitched them together into a collection. And technically not science fiction, but I think it's more like speculative fiction, and that's the kind of science fiction and fiction in general that really interests me. So again, asking the question of not only what if, but how are you going to deal with it? So I don't remember a whole lot about this other than like it's a guy who his body has been dramatically and very thoroughly tattooed, and each tattoo kind of becomes a story. And I remember somehow linking that together in my mind with the Books of Blood by Clive Barker. Completely not science fiction at all. So there you go. That's where we're at. So this next book I rescued from a TBR that did not really go off as I thought it would. It was very ambitious books I was going to try to read before the end of the year. I guess technically it's not the end of the year. It's December 20th when I'm recording this. So I guess I got some time to still read it. It's The Blue Ticket by Sophie McIntosh. Another book that I bought here. Actually, I bought all these here in Shanghai. This is near future, and we're in some kind of economic dystopia. That's not very futuristic, is it? That actually sounds like reality. But anyways, in this version of reality, there's a kind of like social lottery that happens, and if a person gets the blue ticket, they are able to have a job that pays enough for them to live and have, a good life, or what seems like a good life. And the narrator gets that, and of course there's going to be implications. I'm guessing there's like guilt that goes with that. Yeah, and also the ticket, again, here's this another theme. The ticket allows you to not only have a job, but to marry and have children. So another book that kind of ties in with this theme of reproductive rights, of women's rights, of, what's going on with all that. All right, now this next book is probably more of genre sci-fi than the others. It's from a very well-known sci-fi author that I have never read before, so I'm quite curious to read it. It is House of Suns by Alastair Reynolds. Huge name in science fiction, but I've never read anything by him. This caught my eye. It had, I really liked the cover here, and I read the blurb on the back. It's basically about in the far future, the human empire has, spread throughout the galaxy. And I think it's every century or every 2 centuries, these kind of like sentinel drones or something that have been spread throughout the galaxy to record history and what's going on. They gather together to report to an AI, I think it is, or to their master, I guess, about everything that's been happening. And then one time that doesn't happen, they don't come back in to report. So he's got to go out and find out what's going on. So I think it's closer to more traditional genre sci-fi than the other books, but it's gotten great reviews. Alastair Reynolds, really well respected for science fiction that's probably closer to traditional genre science fiction, where it's a bit more of an adventure, it's a bit more thrilling and things like that. But hopefully it's good. Hopefully there's some good stuff going on under the hood there. Now this next book, I don't know if this really qualifies as science fiction, but it's definitely speculative fiction and definitely, literary fiction borrowing from science fiction. It's The Maniac by Benjamin Labatut. I think I've mispronounced that. Really, I read some reviews of this and it really grabbed me, and I was really happy to see that this was available here in Shanghai in China. I think it's kind of a mix of fiction and nonfiction, and basically it's the story of John von Neumann, who is kind of like a massive figure in early AI thinking and early machine learning thinking, and he was kind of the one who conceptualized or mapped out, if I'm getting it correct, he may be he was one of the first people who kind of mapped out the concept of like self-replicating programs and of like robots that build themselves and that kind of thing. And that's kind of been a major factor that's led us into where we are with AI nowadays. And it's kind of like, I think this kind of weaves together, I'm looking at it right now, weaves together his story together with kind of the race for artificial intelligence and all that. So should be a really fascinating and really interesting read. Now, this next book is one I was really lucky to get here because it's pretty specific to China. I don't know if it's available elsewhere. It's The Time Migration by Xixin Liu. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I've been working on some of my Chinese, so hopefully I got that right. He famously wrote The Three-Body Problem, which I actually don't really like. I've tried to read it. I might try and read it again, but I didn't really care for it. But I have heard, I think I actually heard this on Bookpild's channel and on another channel, that this was really good. And this is a collection of short stories and I think a novella. I think The Time Migration is a novella. And this is supposed to actually be much better work than The Three-Body Problem. So that should be really interesting. And it should be cool to read some Chinese science fiction while living in China also. So that should be really interesting. Next book, another book I rescued from my last TBR. It is The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. Again, technically not science fiction, but it is kind of science fiction, speculative fiction. This is a pretty well-known novel. I probably don't need to talk too much about it. It's just about kind of a dystopian future of a group of people living in an island nation, and their memories are altered as needed. I'm not sure what the circumstances are for altering the memories, but the population knows that it happens. People know that you will forget something, and yet it continues to happen. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I was tempted to start this now, but for some reason I jumped into Roadside Picnic. So next one is a classic. A lot of people don't think of it as science fiction, but it is science fiction. And that's what I like a lot. I like books that are kind of somewhere between genre and literary. It's an extremely well-known book, 1984, George Orwell. Don't need to talk about this a whole lot. A lot of people will be interested or shocked to know, or maybe not shocked. I don't know. I bought this here in China. It's a well-known and well-read book in China. I'll leave that open to interpretation. All right, now this next book, try not to laugh at it. I can justify and explain what I've done here. It's Aliens Bishop by T.R. Napper. Even I'm laughing a little bit. Yes, it's a novel set in the Aliens world or the Aliens franchise, whatever you want to call it. I really love Alien. I think it's a great science fiction horror, body horror film. I think it's one of, in my opinion, one of the better films of, the late 21st century. Not going to get on to a big spiel about that, but I just think it's fantastic and it works on so many levels. I tried to read the novelization of William Gibson's script for Alien 3. In case you don't know, William Gibson was contracted and wrote a script for Alien 3, but it was rejected. I think parts of it were kind of recycled. I'm not exactly sure. Anyways, I tried to read the novelization of that last year, and I really didn't like it. I might try it again. I've still got it on a pile back here. But I wanted to give this a try because I really like T.R. Napper. He is a great sci-fi author. He's from Australia. Really interesting. He primarily writes like cyberpunk kind of stuff, but he writes it really well. And cyberpunk is a difficult subgenre to write in. Very few people can pull it off, but he can pull it off quite well. And Bishop is a great character. In case you don't know, he is one of the cyborgs or one of the androids. He was famously ripped in half by the alien. But there are other models of Bishop out there, and that's what this is about. So it should be quite good. And I mean, if anything, it'll just be kind of a fun read. So this next book, definitely not a fun read. And it's a book that I have tried to read twice. And every time I've tried to read it, it's around this time of year. So I might be dooming myself again. But I am determined to read this book because it's supposed to be a seminal work from the author. And again, this book was rescued from a TBR. You can see what it is already. Supercon by J.G. Ballard. Rescued this from my last TBR that I didn't get to. Supposed to be one of Ballard's better later books. I don't have a good excuse for not finishing it twice, other than I was on vacation and I just wanted to be on vacation, and just going outside was more interesting than sitting inside reading. So I think this is something to read now in winter when it's cold and you just want to sort of do something else. So it's set in Eden Olympia, which is a kind of ultra new planned city in France, which is kind of like a hyper optimized Silicon Valley where all of this great tech business stuff is all happening. And yet somehow people are also going crazy and going on killing sprees. And a retired pilot and his psychologist wife go there to do some work and figure out what's going on there. Okay, last two books. This went a lot longer than planned, but that's okay. The last two books are actually some nonfiction. I don't really read much nonfiction, but these two I've been meaning to read for a while. So I'm definitely going to get to them. The first one is 3 Shades of Blue, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, and The Lost Empire of Cool. My friend Lekden told me about this about a year ago once. I'm a huge jazz fan. And just over the last year and a half, I've really gotten back into jazz. I think I'm officially old because new music just does nothing for me anymore. I've tried to get back into indie rock, underground rock music, independent rock. Like I used to be into all that stuff in the 90s and early 2000s, and I just can't get back into it. I've tried to get back into techno and house music because after I got tired of rock, I listened to all that. Can't get back into it. But I've always loved jazz, and I found myself really pulled back into jazz music again. Jazz is a lot like reading. Like once you get into jazz, it's like getting into reading, because jazz, you can go so deep and you can also go so wide and broad. You know, like you can spend your lifetime listening to Miles Davis, and that's kind of a cliche. People always think like, oh, everybody knows Miles Davis. Like it's not that, it's not profound. It's not that new or groundbreaking or anything like that. Miles Davis was incredibly groundbreaking as an artist, as a composer, as a performer, as a recording artist. He did so much incredible stuff. You can spend your lifetime listening to him and listen to so many different styles of music. And that's the point I want to make, is like jazz is a lot like writing, in that working writers over the course of their life, they'll write so many different kinds of books and they'll tell so many different kinds of stories. Jazz musicians do the same thing. They play so many different styles within the realm of jazz. It's absolutely amazing. I've had this book for a while, and then I saw a video by Outlaw Bookseller, and he talked about this again, and I realized like this has been sitting on my shelf for too long. I need to read this. So definitely going to read that. And this last book might be a bit of a difficult read for me, because I've had people in my life with substance abuse problems. It's 000 by Roberto Saviano. It follows the cocaine trade, I think particularly in Europe. He's famous for writing a book called Gomorrah, which was made into, I think, a series and then also a movie. And that focused on a specific part of the Italian mafia. I don't know much about it. I haven't read it or seen the movie. But this one caught my eye. I know his name. I've read some journalism by him. But this caught my eye. It's a little bit different, I think, than the typical like narco sensationalist kind of nonfiction books that we tend to get about cocaine. Whereas this one follows cocaine trade from South America into Europe, but treating cocaine as almost like a commodity, and like how it's traded and how it's tracked and its value and all that kind of stuff. So it should be really interesting read. All right, so those are my reading plans for probably the next 2-3 months. We'll see how long it takes me to get through that stack. A lot of science fiction, a lot of books that are also kind of in that gray area between science fiction and literary fiction, which I think is the most fascinating and just the best kind of writing of all. Let me know, what are your plans, especially if you're reading some science fiction. Let me know what you're reading, or if you're curious about any of these books. If you've read any of those books, let me know what you think. And in case you don't know, my name is Carl, and this has been Please Read Your Book.